Hello, my dear ones, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Maria. This is a channel about spirituality, all things consciousness, the universe, mysteries, alchemy, etc., etc., etc. Welcome. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'm uploading videos every week now and sometimes multiple times a week, so there's a lot of content that's coming right up. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the subconscious. The subconscious is almost like a dirty word in psychology. It is one large, big black box that gets a lot of blame, but does not necessarily get all that much research, to be honest. And so I figured today we're going to dive a little bit into what the subconscious is, the different pockets within it, and how it essentially runs 90% of your life. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about the evolutionary path that we all are on, especially if you are, on my channel. That is probably because you are either spiritually inclined or at least spiritually curious. So I'm going to be diving a little bit into what does that mean for your subconscious. All right. So obviously, there are so many perspectives on what subconscious is. I am providing you the perspective of me as well as my higher self. And I will also kind of like slightly explain the reasoning as well. Now, subconscious is what is governed by the right hemisphere of our brain. So it is the opposite of logic. Our logic lives in the left brain, right? We are predominantly a left brain society. That is why a lot of human beings are righties, right? We write with our right hand is because the left side of our brain controls the right side of our body. The right side of our bodies tend to be masculine sides of our bodies. For instance, when I am diagnosing somebody, I work with, I don't really work with clients, but I work a lot with my inner circle as well as the human collective consciousness. And so when I'm diagnosing anyone, I would be looking at the right side of their body to diagnose anything that's wrong with their own masculinity as well as the masculine side of their lineage, and the left side of their body to diagnose femininity. So in our on planet Earth, the right side of our bodies tend to be the dominating side. There are exceptions, obviously. There are people that write with their left hands. What does this tell me? This tells me that this is a highly logical based society. This is a highly logical world. This is a world where science and mathematics run supreme, right? Where everything needs to be proven in order to have validity. At the same time, right, we, despite being all rational at face value, despite having values of our society stacked against, let's say, the more feminine aspect of our being, such as intuition and insight and creativity and all of those things, right? Those things are kind of like a little bit shunned or considered second stage compared to logic and a mathematical brain and analytics and all of that good stuff. Despite all of that, our lives are run by our subconscious way more than we'd like to admit. A good chunk, and by a good chunk, a vast majority of our decisions, as well as our reactions to people, circumstances, and events, comes from our subconscious, which is why people spend so many years in therapy, because it is hard to not just cope with the byproducts of your own subconscious, but even understand yourself. Because the biggest chunks of ourselves are hidden by us. We're like the little tip of the iceberg, based on this life, right? This life is just the tip of the iceberg that we remember, and everything else is stored in the subconscious. However, even for those people that look at the subconscious from the perspective of spirituality, I find that they're missing some chunks. So here's what I'm seeing when I go into trance. A human subconscious consists of three major chunks of information, or three major chunks of phenomena. And based on those buckets, right, and how they intermingle and intermix with one another, every human, has this one overarching subconscious, right, which is going to run essentially 90% of our lives, 90% of our decisions in the background, right? On autopilot, whether we realize it or not, whether we give it credit or not. Obviously, there is a way to rationalize every decision that we're making, but make no mistake, your subconscious is running the show. Okay, so there are 3 chunks. The first one is probably the least controversial in the spiritual circle, so why don't we start there? For those people that believe in reincarnation, and a lot of people in spirituality do, because that is the truth of the universe, it kind of is almost obvious, right? That if we are all going through a cycle of incarnations, one after another, and by the way, via the process of being behind the veil of forgetfulness, we remember nothing of those past lives unless we try really, really hard and do past life regressions. And even then there is so much skepticism. It seems almost natural and obvious, right? That because we don't remember much of what happened to us in prior incarnations, then that is the realm of our subconscious, right? And depending on the circumstances, events, experiences, the people that we met, karmic knots, that we accumulated in our past lives, our present lives are going to unfold. That is probably the one aspect of our subconscious that drives our actions that a lot of people in spirituality are going to have agreement around. It is a pretty big chunk, actually, of our subconscious. However, I will tell you this. If I were to dissect how much of your subconscious thoughts, feelings, and actions are driven by this bucket, it wouldn't even be the vast majority for most of you. Ba-rum-pum-pum. And that is where we're getting into danger zone, because some of you may be asking, how come? Here's why. There are these 2 other buckets that most people don't talk about that are critical and paramount as we're considering what makes up our subconscious. And these are the other 2 buckets. The second huge, probably largest bucket of all is the collective consciousness of all the beings living on planet Earth. Collective consciousness of humanity. I tap into the collective consciousness of humanity quite often. I have a whole podcast around that. It's called Conversations with My Higher Self that I record from the state of trance. Some recordings are on this channel as well. However, the collective consciousness of humanity is a very interesting construct. So imagine that there was, which by the way there is, a collective space of thought forms and feelings that was created as a byproduct of souls coming to incarnate on planet Earth. So every single soul that ever incarnated on planet Earth left a mark energetically here, whether they came here once and never returned, or they keep coming back, right? So every soul lives an imprint. It's kind of like the butterfly effect, right? The butterfly, flaps its wings here, and then the mountain on the other side of the universe collapses. So it's a little bit of a similar concept. Every person really matters. Every person lives a mark. And so there is this large chunk of energy called the collective of planet Earth that really buries and carries the imprint of every single person that ever incarnated on planet Earth. Now, and that collective consciousness of humanity has a sub-chunk of it, or like subsector of it, of everybody who is currently incarnated. And the reason that becomes part of, our collective subconscious, as well as our individual subconscious, is this. Human beings are a herd species. We are like a collective species, right? We are not meant to survive alone in the wild. How do we know this? Look at our younglings. Look at our babies. A human child cannot survive without the mother. That's why the mother needs to be really, really present, or like somebody needs, like a caretaker, mostly a mother, needs to be present for at least the first 3 years of a baby's life. Otherwise, the baby cannot survive, right? So we are genetically wired to need others around us for comfort, for sustenance, for survival, right? Because of that, we have developed cues and essentially mechanisms of sharing information. And a lot of those mechanisms are extremely subconscious. They run in the background, kind of like a movie, and we are not aware of those. And Because we are a herd species and because we depend on others for survival, when we descend into this incarnation, we don't descend into nothingness. We descend into a soup of collective consciousness that is actually meant to be a support system. What is inside of that collective human consciousness? Everything. All the knowledge and memories around don't eat this plant, it's poisonous. A tiger can eat you. Having a loving mother is important. Like all kinds of thought forms and experiences condensed into this one chunk of energy. And so when we descend here, we almost like put that on as like the number one outfit, as the most important outfit of this incarnation, right? There are a lot of souls that are called star seeds, although arguably at one point everybody was a star seed. So we can have an episode about star seeds. By the way, if you want me to make an episode on star seeds, just leave me a comment below. I'm happy to do that. So everybody, in general, for souls, it is quite normal to not incarnate on the same planet over and over and over again. And so it is very important for the planet that you are incarnating on to have a collective consciousness, because for souls that are new here or the souls that are just randomly visiting, let's say, it's actually really important for them to shorten their adjustment and adaptation period. And really the only way to do that is by connecting to the collective consciousness of that planet, right? It's essentially, do you guys love this movie, The Matrix? Do you remember when Neo was learning Kung Fu? I think it was like one of the martial arts, and it was just like a program that was uploaded into his brain, and he was just like literally, just like I don't know, like in a couple of hours, he's like, I know Kung Fu. It's kind of the same thing, right? Like when souls descend in here, it's like they have a crash course on like what this planet is all about. Everything from like the density to gravity to how energy works to how manifestation works, all of that is kind of, it already is in existence within the human collective consciousness. And so it gets uploaded into like a little baby. But of course, the little baby is unaware of a lot of things and is protected from a lot of things, right? So the little baby is going through massive adjustment periods. The last thing you want to do with a child is bombard them consciously with a lot of data. And so that is why all of this data is uploaded into a subconscious pocket and stays there for the duration of somebody's life. And when the push comes to shove, when it comes for you to react or respond to different stimuli in the physical world, one thing that's going to happen is your consciousness is going to refer to this database of everything that you know to be true from the collective consciousness. And based on that, you're going to be making decisions, or you're going to be reacting in the moment. And it happens quite naturally, and it's like instantaneous. So that is kind of like how the human collective consciousness gets to run our lives, and we don't even realize it. The third bucket, last but not least, is the collective consciousness of your family, of your familial lineage, which is essentially a database of all of their memories, all of the happening, like all of the circumstances, all of the things that have ever happened to them from the beginning of time, literally from the moment in time when the two lineages of your mom and dad, of your parents, were established. Why is this relevant? Not every single lineage is created equal. Different lineages bear the imprints of the founding couples, as well as, essentially all the members of the lineage. So the collective knowing of your lineage may be significantly different from the collective knowing of the human consciousness as a whole. Why? I'll give you an example. Probably like one of the easier ones. Let's think of like the lineage, like a royalty lineage in Europe, right? Their collective consciousness is going to be very different compared to the collective consciousness of somebody who comes from a family of priests, for instance, right? It's a very, or like a family of smiths. Those are very, very different consciousnesses because they have different experiences. For instance, right? I don't know, like in the royal families of Europe, protecting the bloodline was very, very important, right? You couldn't just marry into whomever. It's essentially the world of arranged marriage, which brought about a whole set of trauma right? Comes with it, right? Loveless marriages, cheating to a whole other degree. Marriage is a transaction, all kinds of genetic issues around, interbreeding too much. All of that would live in the collective consciousness of that one family. Or for instance, another thing, unfortunately, that was very prevalent in Europe is, murdering your family, your siblings to take the throne, right? That wounding is going to be very much a part of that lineage, but it may not be a part of the lineage next to it. So essentially what I'm saying is that on top of having this pocket of human collective consciousness, the other thing that you upload to your own database of the subconscious when you incarnate into this planet is also whatever happened to your lineage, because it is believed that whatever happened to your lineage has the highest propensity of happening to you in the future. Why? Because there is a clusterization principle on planet Earth as well as the universe, right? The clusterization principle is like attracts like, or in other words, the law of attraction. You cannot just come randomly into a lineage. That just does not happen. You have to be attracted into a lineage. In other words, you have to be vibrating at the same frequency that the lineage is vibrating at. And so, because of that, right, a lot of traumas, for instance, that exist within the lineage are copy-paste traumas, right? Because similar type of beings keep coming into the same lineage, experiencing similar types of karmic knots, right? So the past is a very, very good predictor of the future. So here is what we're dealing with. Your subconscious is a collection of all three buckets, just as a quick refresher. The first bucket are your past lives, your past experiences that as a soul you specifically had. The second and the largest bucket is a collective consciousness of planet Earth. And the third bucket, smaller bucket, is a collective consciousness of your particular lineage. Some of you may be wondering, well, my lineage exists on planet Earth. So wouldn't that consciousness be a part of this larger human collective consciousness? Yes, the answer is it absolutely would. However, because your lineage is just one lineage, its frequency would be very diluted inside of the human collective consciousness. And human collective consciousness really is the grand average of everything. So on the one hand, it's a very helpful database, but a grand average rating, like, I don't know if you guys are, if you've ever thought about it, but a lot of products on the internet, I don't know, Amazon, are between 3 and 4 stars, right? Because if they're not terrible products, that is what most people are going to rate them at, between 3 and 4 stars, right? And so when something is just a grand average, at one point it becomes really, really cumbersome and hard to compare and contrast things, right? You're like, well, this product has 3.4 and this product has 3.5, like which one is better? And the answer is they're probably very similar, right? But where I'm going with this is if you were to just refer to the larger database of the collective human consciousness, you would get the law of averages, which is not always very applicable. And that is why there is this additional layer of the lineage of your family that is also being factored in. Now, here's the kicker. As you're going through your journey, what pockets of your consciousness get activated the most inside of your subconscious changes. For people who are, let's say, not awakened, for people who are subscribing to the templates of planet Earth a lot and kind of like living the normal life, the number one, actually the two pockets that are going to run their life the most are going to be the pocket of the collective consciousness of this planet and the pocket of the collective consciousness of their lineage. Those two would run their lives the most. Because, again, going back to the fact that human beings are a herd species, they haven't graduated into their individuality quite yet, right? So because they haven't graduated into their individuality quite yet, they don't remember their own past lives, they don't really associate themselves with more than just the physical body or the physical existence. So naturally, their subconscious is not going to tap too much into their own past lives. What their subconscious is going to tap into the most is the collective consciousness of humanity, as well as the collective consciousness of their lineage. As you progress on your spiritual journey, as you do the things, as you meditate, as you open up your third eye, as you connect to your higher self, as you align to your life purpose, the whole 9 yards. What's going to happen is there's going to be more of you inside of you, if that makes sense. And then there's going to be less of the law of averages, right? Because the more you awaken to the truth of this reality, you are an immortal being, right? You don't die when this life ends, and then there's so many more experiences past this one life, and you've already had so many experiences. Once you awaken to that truth, as well as start working with your spirit guides, your higher self, you meditate on a daily basis, you're connected, your crown chakra is open, all of those things, then there is more of you that descends into this body. Your higher self can even send you more energy, not just information, but more energy for this incarnation, because awakened, shall I say, souls get the most protection, support, resources from the light realm. It's just the law of, it's kind of like the law of physics, a little bit, because it just makes sense for higher beings to reward people who are on the path. And you would notice essentially that the more you remember who you are, the more you dive into your past lives, subconscious is going to bypass the collective consciousness and is going to produce shortcuts and is going to start introducing reactions from your past lives, which is actually good news, you guys, right? Not because your own personal past lives are in any way, shape, or form better or worse than the human collective. However, those are your mistakes, if that makes sense. That is your karma. If you start acting from what are your mistakes and your karma, then you can start fixing it. Then you can start doing like looking at yourself in the mirror and really understanding what are your toxic patterns. What are the things that you need to really, really, really work through? Because I'm always monitoring the collective consciousness as we're talking, there is a question, and I needed to address the question that just came up. The question that just came up, or the confusion rather, is this: but what about karma? Isn't karma really, really running our lives? And the answer is yes. Each of you has come to planet Earth with 3 to 5 major karmic knots. And that is probably the one exception to the rule. So the karmic knots are going to be essentially very present. It's like HUD buttons. It's like the shortcuts. Your karmic knots do run your reactions quite a lot. The karmic knots that you have selected, or your higher self has selected for you to work through in this life, they impact what's going on quite a lot. Meaning, even if you are in the non-awakened bucket of normal people, and for the most part, your subconscious is tapping into the other two buckets, so the bucket of the collective human consciousness and the bucket of the lineage, your 3 to 5 karmic knots are still going to co-run the show, if that makes sense. But 3 to 5 karmic knots is not yet full access to the entirety of who you are. That is just such like a little minuscule, like teeny bit of who you are at soul level that I could not even begin to describe that to you. By the way, one last point that I want to make. I don't know if you guys are familiar with shadow work, but shadow work is essentially getting straight into the trauma and healing it, and kind of like, as such, coming into the fullness of who you are at soul level, right? So it's addressing the parts of you that are not necessarily just bad parts of you, but the parts of you that you rejected at one point and didn't want to deal with at one point, or judged about yourself or your incarnations. So shadow work is actually a very, very important process on the path to, on the path of spirituality, on the path to personal healing. One thing I will tell you is this: shadow work is possible on every one of the 3 levels, layers that we just spoke about. So shadow work is possible on your personal layer. Shadow work is possible on the collective consciousness of humanity layer and on the lineage layer. In other words, just by the virtue of you being a human incarnated on planet Earth, you can heal humanity by doing shadow work at the collective level. And you can heal your lineage by doing shadow work at the level of your lineage. I made a couple of episodes If you're interested about shadow work, I made a video about shadow work not too long ago about the tips and tricks around doing shadow work. So check it out if you want more information. I've recorded probably more than one podcast as well. It is on Spotify. Those episodes about shadow work that I did were the earlier episodes. So the recordings are not available on YouTube. So if you want to check it out, be my guest. My podcast is called Conversations with My Higher Self. It is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and a few other platforms. All right, well, let me know, what you guys think about the video. Let me know if you agree and if this information resonates with you. If you have your own thoughts on the subconscious, what the subconscious is, or if you have some interesting observations, please let me know in the comments. I love interacting with you via this medium. I love hearing from you. Let me know if this content is interesting, if you want more similar type videos as well. Yeah, and if you end up working with your subconscious in one of the 3 buckets, let me know how it goes. On that note, healing our relationship with our subconscious, becoming more conscious, living a more awakened, a more aligned life is a process. And the first step on that process is doing the inner work. And so I hope that this video helps shed the light on some of the lesser understood aspects about our human existence. And I am giving you a big virtual hug, and I will see you in the next video.